But importantly, we're talking about this concept of toughness, and from my perspective, it was something that I don't think I always had, but it was something that we developed. So there are three key terminologies that I'd like you to have a little bit of a think about. One is called grit. You tell me if you've heard of these. Grit, resiliency, and toughness, mental toughness. Who's heard of them?
Yeah.
What have you heard of? Who's heard of grit? There's a book written about it, Angela Duckworth. Anyone know what grit is? How would you define it? Because I think all of these three things are a little bit different, and we sort of need them all. So what do you think? What's grit?
Fibre of your being.
What? Sorry?
The fibre of your being. Fibre of who you are.
And what does it look like? Because I'm interested in what people with the actual quality do, right? So if it's the fibre of your being, how would someone who has it, how would they behave on a daily basis?
Do what other people wouldn't do on a daily basis.
Such as?
Such as work, do the training, do what's required. They would get up at 5 a.m. when no one else wants to get up at 5 a.m. because they have a bigger goal in mind. And
they would just keep persisting, right? Over the long term. And one of the quotes behind me here is related to that concept of consistency. It's doing those little things consistently well over a really long period of time. That's what grit is. It's actually defined as long-term perseverance. Okay, now grit is going to help you get to the Olympics, but it's not going to help you do well in the Olympic final. That's another quality again. So what do you think we mean by resiliency? And how is that different to grit? What's resiliency? One of the ladies this morning had the exact right definition, so the pressure's on. What is it? Huh?
Overcoming the hurdles.
Overcoming hurdles. Never giving up. Something else.
bounce back.
Bounce back. So it's the ability to bounce back. One of the interesting things about resiliency is that when we look at really successful people, athletes, business people, and I'm not defining success as how much money you have or how many medals you have. It's your own definition as to how you measure yourself, which we'll chat a little bit about later. But the ability to recover. And often people who are really resilient, they don't bounce back in the same shape and form. We work with the Paralympic ski team from Australia, and one of the coaches was Michael Milton. Anyone familiar with Michael Milton?
Yep.
What happened to him? He got cancer. He lost his leg.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Did he give up skiing?
No, he didn't.
And what, in fact, did he end up doing?
Going to the Paralympics.
And he, at one stage, was the world record holder for downhill. He actually go quicker on one ski, apparently. But the point is that that's an example of someone who finds a way, who comes back in another shape and form, and still manages to get the job done. That's a great example of resiliency, bouncing back. Not in the same way, but in a different shape and form, and still working it out. And then the final one is toughness, because resiliency is not going to win you the Olympic medal either. So what's toughness, and how is it different to those two other concepts? What do you think?
Mental.
What's that?
Mental.
Yeah, it is mental. I mean, they're all sort of mental, right? But what's the difference between toughness? Because at the Olympics, for example, it's no different to what we're doing here. Somebody says, hey, you've got to turn up at 6:10 p.m. and you've got to present to all these people, and you have to do a good job. You can't stand up there and stutter and stammer and forget what you're going to say. You've got to get on with it and get it done at this point in time. I can say, actually, you know what? I was feeling really good at 2 o'clock. Could we have done it then? So toughness is your ability to perform when? When you're asked to. If someone says, this is what I love about the Olympics, they set the schedule 2 to 3 years in advance, and they say on July the 23rd at 10:30 in the morning, you have to turn up and perform at your best, and there's a window of time for about 5.5 minutes for the duration of your race, or 6 minutes, or whatever it might be, and you have to organise yourself well enough and maintain your composure and everything else that's required to deliver your best performance in that moment. It's one of the reasons why in the Summer Olympics anyway, it's very rare to see an Olympic gold medal and what else at the same time? A world record. Very, very rare. Normally everyone underperforms. It's just that the person who wins the gold medal underperforms less. It's common to have people breaking world records a week out, a month out, 2 weeks later, because the Olympics is different. Okay? So those three if you like, definitions are really, really important for what we're chatting about today. It's the heart of everything we do. And the reason why we talk about it so much these days wasn't always the case. Because all of our clients in the US, they're big Division I college coaches. We started doing a little bit of work in the NFL, and some of our clients work with the NBA, and the list goes on. But if every single coach, if I got paid money for every single coach that said my athletes today aren't tough enough, they're not resilient, they're not gritty, they're actually having if you like, a little bit of a comment on this current generation, because those that have been coaching, maybe yourselves managing, working with people for more than 10, 15, 20 years, they're seeing a difference. And we're recognizing, well, if there's a difference, we're putting it back onto the coach and saying, if your athletes are turning up and they don't have this quality, what are you doing to develop it? And what's their answer? Well, a lot of them are searching for the answer. Well, how do you develop this stuff? Because what do you think? Do you think it's something which is innate? Do you think that these qualities are part of your personal makeup, that you were born with them? Or do you think that they're qualities that you managed to develop over the space of time somehow? Which one? The former or the latter? You'd hope that they're developed, right? And from my perspective, this is not so much whether it's true or not, it's what you choose to believe. And if you choose to believe that these qualities can be developed, it's the same as, there's a famous researcher, her name's Dweck, and she's at Stanford University, or one of our clients. Everything I'm presenting here, strangely enough, is being used in Stanford's sports psychology degree, which is sort of a little bit strange. But anyway, Dweck did a lot of work around this concept called fixed versus growth mindset. Anyone heard of that? A fixed mindset is, for example, saying that, hey, this is as good as I can be because my physicality doesn't allow me to be any better, or my IQ is such so that enables me to do these particular jobs. You know, back in '95, Daniel Goleman wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, Why It Matters More Than IQ. And what we learnt back then was that your IQ might be good enough to get you into a PhD program at a university, but it doesn't predict your success in the real world, because you've got to go and work with someone else and convince them of your ideas as being useful. You can be really smart, but not actually be able to influence people, right? And that fixed mindset that this is it, that this is all you can do, as opposed to a growth mindset which suggests that if you need to develop your toughness or your grittiness or your resiliency, that these are skills that can be learnt, like anything else. But again, it's up to you whether you want to believe that. Does that make sense? Okay, so in all of the work that we've done, what we found really interesting is that there are a lot of programs around the world, there's a lot of organizations, businesses, teams, and everything else that do a really good job in certain aspects of developing these qualities and skills, and yet it still doesn't happen. And from what we've noticed is that we talk a lot about systems. And you know, in a system, you change one thing and what happens? It changes something else, right? It's like when you go to buy a new fridge and you think, I just got to get a new fridge. The old one doesn't work anymore. I'll go get this one. And you realize that it doesn't quite fit in the space. And so now you've got to remodel the whole kitchen. Or at least that's your excuse, right? Anyway, it happens all the time. It's because it's part of a system. It's supposed to be built into it. And so what we're talking about with the whole mental toughness equation here is that it too is a system.